They have to play 8 straight Super Bowl contenders to end the year. This is the dumbest line ever. So I'm having a Gordon Gekko moment from Wall Street. Like last night, I have this epiphany. So I'm sending out the notes to some of my friends, my movers. And I'm like, Gordon Gekko, I'm like, start buying up Steelers under 8.5, minus 120. Use the offshores. And keep it quiet.
The numbers told the story. They always do.
It's one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
This is a numbers game with Gil Alexander on VSiN.
How you doing, Fez?
I love the legal discussions that occur. Next time you have the lawyer guy on, I want you to ask that Alabama coach that famously texted his friend, "Hey, our star pitcher's not pitching. Get down against us."
Yeah.
How is that not illegal? Like you got fired, but you haven't heard anything. I don't know if there's a crime being committed. I bet it will be illegal within a few years, right?
That is a great point.
It's a great question. Crossings, and is it different if it's crossing state lines or not crossing state lines?
That's how they always get you with that racketeering. You go in the slammer. Yeah.
There was a guy in my high school. This is a true story. He ended up on America's Most Wanted. It's a true story. He tried to kill his dad. For insurance money. He ended up on America's Most Wanted. You know what his real crime was? He crossed the Maryland, D.C. border. Like, that's what made it into a federal offense. If he stayed in one state, it would be, that's fine. You're just in Maryland. It's
small fine.
Yeah, small fine. Small fine. Yeah.
Everybody hates their dad now and again.
Yeah. By the way, 30 years in a white-collar prison is what ended up happening. Okay. I have to ask you several questions because we talked about you yesterday on the show because you were kind enough to give us the plays that you made week 1 of the NFL. By the way, $80 fine for pass posting some of those.
Times 5? Are there five multiple counts? Hey, after we got done with tennis, I felt like they had to hook me up with an IV, so I'm just happy to be alive after Gilly and Gilly made me play a second full set against him and crushed me.
I was worried about Steve's health at one point there. I was like, are you going to be okay?
Steve, he could talk big. He was worried about you.
Yeah.
He was. You were hitting shots. I don't think he wasn't expecting. You were throwing the old changeup when he thought a fastball was coming. He couldn't keep up with it.
I am like in Major League. I am that pitcher that has like the Vaseline up his sleeve and stuff. I'll put Vaseline on a ball if I need that point really, really bad, whatever it takes. But yeah, the little dunk shot down the line with the forehand. When Gil and I play, it's fascinating because there are a lot of winners when we're playing, and that's why Wishnev is ducking both of us back in Pittsburgh. I want you, Wishnev. You can hide, but we're here.
So anyway, about the football. So I got to Wishnev, but he is ducking us. So I also shared a more macro statement that a philosophy you had about week 1 lines, having to do with totals. Not just week 1s, but you believe in betting betting unders now versus betting overs now, later betting overs. Explain that to us.
Yeah, so bottom line is last year the scoring average was about 44, all right? Now, famously, weeks 1 and 2 are lower scoring by about a point and a half. And so if you look at the cumulative average, if you look at these totals, it's like there are no totals in the 30s. And there are totals that opened, in the low 50s. So you do the average, and it's like they, across the board, look to be a little bit too high. Now, someone will say, there's kickoff change rule.
Kickoff rules, yeah.
And so for those who've been under a rock and don't know, so it's kind of like the spring football rules used to be where both teams going to line up on the receiving team side of the ball, 10 yards away. They're going to kick the ball. No one can move,
Kelly.
No one can move.
That's the big thing.
Until the ball is received. Kick it in the end zone, you get it in the 30 now. So what's going to happen, if you're a left-footed kicker that can kick a corkscrew, line drive, kickoff that's like spinning uncontrollably and land it right around the 5, you have yourself a job kicking off in the NFL now. But I think the average starting point will be like the 28. So I do think scoring's going to go up a little, but across the board, look to play unders right now, weeks 1 and 2. And I think selectively there will be value. Like Miami-Jacksonville's at 49.5 some spots. I like that under.
That was first thing that jumped out to me too. As we were just going when those lines came down.
Yeah, you mentioned this.
Well, you're looking at sides. You're looking at sides, and then I don't bet a ton of totals, Steve. But you just think back to what we went through last season, like you're talking about. So many totals in the 30s, and you're just like, what am I looking at here overall? Like you said, it just all felt a little bit too high to me at first glance.
Possible rookie quarterbacks, be game management, be careful. And also, like, on a hot, sweltering day in college football, I don't really know why. In college football, the defense gets gassed, and I think it's because the offensive linemen in college aren't as big in the NFL. In the NFL, they're like dinosaurs, brontosauruses, and they can't move. It's like me after we get done in tennis. They're moving so slow, they're going into the shade, and it's like, all right, we cannot run a hurry up with these guys. They're done.
Let me just ask you a broader question, though. So people know you from this show, they know you from Sharp Money, they know you from general media that you do. What part of and they know you to be a successful bettor, what part of I don't know if this is the right way to ask it, of the way that you approach sports betting? Because most people are like, the average sports bettor is listening to this and they're going, wow, this dude is making week 1 bets in May. You don't blink at that. You see an opportunity, you see an edge, you play it, you're okay to wait that long. The average bettor doesn't do that. Would you say to the average bettor that you ought to do that, or is that just unrealistic? Because the average person's life, that's not the way their betting brain works.
This is going to be dangerous. So the average bettor has a small betting bankroll, so they can't tie up their money.
Right.
All right? However, they probably also have money invested, quite a few people, and they've got maybe money in a bond fund. Well, that bond fund's going to earn, 6% over the course of a year. So think about that, as opposed to being able to put it into a future and have a higher or a week 1 bet that you're only tying up your money for 4 months that has a 6% return on investment. So example, Detroit's playing the Rams. You can lay Detroit -3, lay $1.15. That bet will not be there in a couple days. It's like it cannot be there. The Rams are like average or just barely above average, and Detroit is a contender, and Detroit is home. It's like everyone knows Detroit has value there, except for the books that are hanging that number. And then the question is, well, Steve Fezzik, how come you haven't bet $50,000 on Detroit? It's much more difficult to get down. Even in the NFL, there's this perception, you can just bet $100,000. Don't take whatever you want. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's gotten to be very difficult to bet anything substantial, even in the NFL on early lines and the like.
And you would argue, I guess the extension of this is you would argue that is a more sound bet, therefore, to get you will have the best of it more often than not doing it this way in football, that's a more sound wager than anything you could do in the stock market, for instance.
Well, than I could do. Now, someone who's really adept in investing in the stock market is probably laughing and Bitcoin's going down today, right. And I know because of this factor, but I'm unaware of those factors. So for me, it's what I'm best at.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
I also think Bitcoin is a specific thing, right? So I don't know that that's a fair comp.
I think that's overall though, that's a conversation with I have with friends, right? Who are bettors, who are always giving me stock market advice and stuff. It's well, this is where I'm more comfortable at. That's where you're more comfortable.
Have you actually tracked this? Have you gone back and seen, okay, me doing this months in advance, getting what I perceive will be the best of it? Have you gone back and actually graded these?
No, and here's why. Here's why. I literally never lose. Okay, betting season wins and the like. And I go back to there's a guy who runs around town, David Kaufman. He's 105. Okay, and he's got this big computer bag. He doesn't own a computer. He's got sheets everywhere stuffed around. And all he does, he walks. They're idiots. I got Green Bay over 9.5 and under 10 plus $1.05, and he's got all these middles that are constantly profitable middles that you have to have the edge in, in baseball. Like the Washington Nationals, you can get over 66 and under 69 at the same time at 2 different books, and it's you are not going to lose with portfolios like that. And I'd be more than happy if someone's Fez, he's just blowing up smoke. It's hey, you can ask Jeff Benson. He'll be more than hell happy to say Steve's doing just fine despite donking off $40,000 famously on Purdue.
Gil, we just talked about a UFL game, right? Where we just saw.
Well, we're watching a game this week. We had a 1.5 point difference through I guess what is a key number.
2.5 and a 4.
Let me just ask you this. I just need a 5-second answer to this. What is more enjoyable for you, winning money or calling people Dumbos? What's more?
Dumbo.
Okay, that's what I want. Just curious. Jim Devitt. I'm very surprised PGA attorneys do not provide drivers for the players. When on Key Biscayne, the old Miami Open provided cars and drivers for all tennis players regardless of ranking. And you might remember, Gil, what a traffic CF that was. Oh, yes, I do. But what a tournament. and keep his game.
I don't know how each of the individual golf tournaments work, because they usually get the courtesy cars that they all drive, but I guess I would assume there's a driver option, but...
I mean, could you imagine Novak Djokovic rolling up, driving into a tournament like that?
Yeah, it is odd.
Jimmy Lopez, I can never decide what's a better story, the high school acquaintance attempted murder story or the Mike Barrick what was his name? Mike Barrick's Yom Kippur Massacre. It's the Yom Kippur Massacre. The Yom Kippur Massacre is the greatest gambling story ever told. The Todd Wishnev story. Doug Wedge. Pardon me, Doug. Our buddy Doug Wedge. George at 25-1 LFG. Books need to get it together, not only posting college baseball odds in a timely manner, but also with live betting, much like Field of Dreams. If you build it or post it, they will come. And on with the tweets. We always appreciate it. First of all, we just did the promo for the Preakness. Do you ever bet these Triple Crown races? I never hear you talking about betting these horses.
I'm a follower, so I'm a horse matchup guy. So famously, I don't like making a bet. Imagine, I'm going to bet Detroit against the Rams, and then the book will tell me what I'm going to lay right after the game started.
Right.
My brain can't handle it either.
It's when they used to have they still have the Derby. At the ballrooms at the South Point. And I remember Wishnev, for whatever reason, certain comments land on you. And I remember Wishnev was, whatever horse we were betting, he's like, how much are we going to win? I go, we don't know yet. He goes, I forgot about that blank. Right.
Famously, the matchups are the way to go. You lock in a matchup. Example, Kentucky Derby, you got one mutter, you got one non-mutter. They're up against each other. The weather changes, and if it goes bad, you bet on the mutter in a matchup. Things like that.
Mutter's a mutter. Scotty Scheffler, by the way, has just updating his round through 5 after all the Mishugas from this morning. Birdie, bogey, birdie, par, par. So he is 1 under through 5 today. 5 under for the tournament. 4 shots behind the first round leader, Xander Schauffele, who is about to tee off.
Whoever Scheffler's lawyer is who wrote that narrative that he put out, that guy should be hired by everyone, because that was the greatest statement Scotty Scheffler put out ever.
Agree completely. Beyond classy.
Yes.
It's not about me. Someone died here. Let's focus on that and only that. It was beautiful.
Was.
And correct, by the way, and pitch perfect on that. Okay, you wanted to, let's go back to football for a second. Kelly and I sat here like everybody did and react to the NFL schedule release. We knew what the opponents were going to be for every team. We just didn't know the sequencing of it. And so we sort of broke down the 5 easiest schedules based on season win totals. And then, of course, we did the same for the hardest. And the hardest of them all came down to this amazing gauntlet that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have to go through. Their final 8 games of the season. By the way, it doesn't start out that easy for Pittsburgh either. They start out at Atlanta, at Denver in elevation, and then the Chargers. But their final 8 games, this is legendary, at least on paper. Home Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, home Cleveland, at Philly, at Baltimore, home Kansas City, home Cincinnati. You couldn't make it up worse. And so this, of course, then brings to mind the whole Mike Tomlin thing, which we joke about for all these years. Like, oh, my God, I didn't hear this stat. That Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season ever.
What?
Well, if he is going to keep that streak alive, my God, is that going to be a feat? Because I'm just going to sit here and say right now in May, Kelly, that streak is over.
Steve's going to talk me into it, man. I tried to swear off betting against the Miami Heat or Pittsburgh Steelers win totals.
And now, after that diatribe, I give it to Steve Fezzik.
So I have a mental flashback to the movie Gauntlet, and it's like Clint Eastwood and Mike Tomlin are like driving this big city bus, that's been I got this metal reinforcements, and the entire PD of Dallas is shooting at them to keep them to get from 9 wins. That's what's going to happen in these last 8 games as Pittsburgh runs the gauntlet. But here's a classic example: the Pittsburgh season win number opens 8.
Yes,
and obviously that's a mistake because. I don't know if you guys are aware.
What?
Tomlin has never had a losing season, so obviously he can have a losing season. We can still push. He goes 8-9, so we're going to bet 8. So the market, it makes sense. And they bet it up to 8.5. Okay. And now we've had a timber moment where the tree is starting to fall in the forest, and people are like, but wait a minute. Even though we've got these 17 years or whatever it is of history, Pittsburgh's a pretty much average team. And they play not only they don't play a difficult schedule, they play the most difficult schedule in the NFL. The Bengals famously finished last, so they don't even get, 4th place opponents.
Right.
And They have to play 8 straight Super Bowl contenders to end the year. This is the dumbest line ever. So I'm having a Gordon Gekko moment from Wall Street. Like last night, like I have this epiphany. So I'm sending out the notes to some of my friends, my movers. And I'm like, Gordon Gekko, I'm like, start buying up Steelers under 8.5, minus 120. Use the offshores and keep it quiet.
That's great.
So we grabbed a bunch of Pittsburgh
keep it
under.
Quiet. Yeah. It's brutality, their schedule. Like, it's brutal. 8 straight Super Bowl contenders.
People are saying Tomlin can win Coach of the Year if he wins 9 games. Well, guess what? You only win Coach of the Year if you get a Herculean, above-expectation effort. And given that's only half game better, I really think, and I was actually thinking this is the opposite of Drew Dinsick, who I respect, with his alternative win totals and the high variance.
Yes.
There is no way Pittsburgh can win 10 games this year.
Yeah.
It's I want to play under 9.5 and lay minus 220 because maybe famously he somehow keeps the streak alive and he gets to 9.
We rarely talk about those, from that side of it, of laying.
Oh yeah, what you were referring to is Drew has probably articulated it better than anybody. Is that probably the best betting vehicle pre-flop in the NFL historically is alternate season win totals, but as Kelly was alluding to, what we were generally referring to were the plus money ones.
Right, yeah.
Especially these rookie quarterbacks. We don't know how good they're going to be. So famously, look last year, Houston versus Carolina.
That's right.
They're so far away from expectation because one team picked a good quarterback and the other didn't.
And all you need to do is look at a final NFL standings and juxtapose it against pre-flop season win totals, and you'll see how many teams fall outside of the standard deviation where these will cash. But what you're saying is that the Steelers example is so stark that the notion of the plus money ones that don't even bother, that you would lay money because it's so ridiculous for them.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, the reason the models, I think, fail is that we have the spreads on every game. You can convert those to money lines and compute the expectations with the standard deviation. But the flaw is that it doesn't take into account injuries and changes in the team's makeup such that it is unrealistic to think, if you told me for the Jets, for instance, all right? If you told me the Jets are going to start the season 2-3, they're donezo. The Jets are going to win 6 or 7 games because they have an easy start to the schedule.
Very easy start, yep.
So by definition, if they have some losses early on, it could be a bumpy road. The Jets could win 6 games this year.
There's no other sport like this, right? The fact that we can get so wrapped up in May for a football season, as we're talking about it, that September through January football feeling starts to get into you.
And missed opportunities. So, the Chargers opened 2.5 against the Raiders. So, and I got a small piece of that, and I laid some 3. So think about this. If the Chargers win by exactly 3, and I know it opened 2.5, and it's going to close 4, all right, against the Raiders. If they win by 3, and I don't win a lot of money, I'm like, what am I doing? It's whenever a game like that with an obvious line with the Bengals open 7, they're going to close double digits. It's you got to have gotten a piece of the Bengals already, or else you're just betting too much on the WNBA. By the way, I don't think the Fever are going to have a good year this year.
Do you see that
out
yesterday?
Out of teaser range, man. 9.5 already on that Bengals side of places.
By the way, just to follow up on the Caitlin Clark story. The Caitlin Clark story from
Liberty's still good.
Ticket prices are dropping in these 14,000-seat arenas across the country.
They lost. The Fever lost by 36 last night. Caitlin Clark, 9-7-6. She was 2 of 8 from the field. First time she didn't get double digits since she had 8 points against Northwestern in 2021, January of 2021. Real quick, 30 seconds. Survivor. The notion of Christmas Day has 2 days. It's a Wednesday. There's 2 NFL games. There's a game the day after. If the Circa management decides that it's only the 2 games on Christmas as a standalone week, would you even play Survivor?
Oh, of course, because even if you play a bad poker tournament with a bad structure, there's so much dead money that so your edge decreases. You still have an edge, and they don't rake anything. So you just have to be an average player, to go ahead and play. But Circa will include that game. I'm very confident.
I'm confident they will too.